Hey guys, welcome back to another How to Invest in Baltimore by the Numbers. Another video in our series where we go over the why, how, and what. Why we invest in the properties that we do, how we invested in them, and what were the results. So in this video today, we are going to go over the specific real life example of 2522 North Elmont Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21216. So let's chat about first how we found this one. So we found this one on MLS. It had been listed for a while. I think the seller had it up at 69,000. They'd shifted it down. I think they're having issues with their tenants. I think they're having issues with leaks in the property, so maintenance. I saw the property had been listed for a while, but I also saw them keep decreasing the price. Eventually, I went over to check this one out, but we found it on MLS. So anybody could have seen this property, and we found it back in April of 2018. And that's when we ended up putting it under contract. What did I like about this property? If you look at the streets via Google Maps, you're going to see this is just a normal neighborhood, a normal street, nothing crazy, no burnouts. This is normal homeowner properties. So when I went to go look at the property, I had a really good feeling. My gut feel for the property was, man, this is just normal people around here. This is great. This is a good area to live. The other things that I loved is I liked that it was a duplex. So it had a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom on the top, and a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom top unit, and a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom on the bottom unit. 2 units. One of the units had a Section 8 tenant already, unit 2, which is going to give me all sorts of issues down the road. But I just knew that the government was paying for the entire rent. I think it was somewhere around $875 that they were paying each month. And I didn't have to worry about the tenant paying that because Baltimore City was paying the Section 8 tenant's rent. The other unit, unit 1, was vacant. It had some leaks, it had some damages, so we had to go in there and rehab it. But the other things that I liked about the property was that it was in Hanlon Park, which I like. I would invest in that area. So a lot of people say, where to invest in Baltimore City? I think it's an undervalued area of the city. It's close to Baltimore City Community College. It's close to Coppin State. It's got a pretty cool lake right there. It's close to Druid Hill Park, which I like a lot. It's close to public transit. So it's just, you can get into the city, get out of the city, and it's got a bunch of amenities that I do like. It also had off-street parking, which I liked. And the other thing that I loved is when I looked at my analyzer, it had crazy cash flow, somewhere around like $700 a month cash flow. And that was with a loan. So I always love seeing properties that give you cash flow. What were the issues with this properties when we went in? We realized, I talked just briefly about there were some leaks. The tenant was giving me issues. I'm going to share a story here in a minute. There was also paneling. The property is older. It is a single family. So it used to be attached to another property. The city must have demoed it, or somebody demoed the entire building to the side. So it was turned into a single family property. I don't always love single family properties as rental investments because you have to take care of, instead of 2 walls or maybe 3 walls as an in unit, you got to take care of all 4 walls. And what I mean, if you have to redo siding, you got to redo siding on all 4 walls, not just the front and back if it's a townhouse. So it becomes more expensive as far as maintenance down the road. I realized that the property had paneling throughout the property, which I hate, but it's also relatively expensive to rip out everything and do a full gut and do all drywall. The property had drop ceiling, which is disgusting. I mean, tenants don't love that. It just looks gross. It's not great. It also had some water issues that we inherited with the property. It was just, the front porch on it was all wood, and there's no possible way to kind of seal it all the way up, or no way that I really knew to seal it all the way up. So always had a little bit of issues here and there with that. Let's talk about buying properties with tenants inside of them. This could probably be a completely whole episode in itself, but when you buy a property with tenants, you need to make sure that those tenants are taking care of the property. I had met the Section 8 tenant. I think the first time I met him, there was alcohol on his breath. I mean, you could just tell, like, okay, this is probably not the person that's going to take care of the property really well. So just know when you purchased with tenants in place, it's going to be really hard to rehab tenants units. Because if you're doing drywall, you're doing paint, I mean, that's very disruptive. That's going to frustrate the tenant. It's going to cause all sorts of disruption. So just realize that was why it was nice that the downstairs unit was vacant. We fixed it up and we could keep it moving. But just be aware, it's tougher if you have bad tenants. You need to purchase the property at a gross discount. So what did we do here? We ended up purchasing the property via cash, and we rehabbed during cash. A lot of people, as an initial investor, will probably do hard money, but we had the capital to just purchase in cash and do the rehab in cash. So what we did here for the rehab on that bottom unit, that's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. This was a light rehab. It was approximately 800 square feet. And we put in about $20K here when we initially got the property. And in the initial pictures that you see of the listing, it doesn't look terrible. I mean, there's some really like dated mirrors in the property, and it just needed love. We redid the bathroom because the bathroom was kind of funky layout. The vanity was really tight to get into the bathroom. So we put in a really narrow vanity, but we redid the flooring. We repainted the unit. We put in new kitchen cabinets, new shaker kitchen cabinets. We put in granite countertops because we love them as far as maintenance goes. You just don't really have to do anything, just clean them during tenant turnover. We put in central air in both the top and bottom units. What do we keep? We kept most of the doors. We kept the paneling. We kept the drop ceiling because it was all in pretty good shape. There's no really reason to rip it out. We also ended up having to replace the roof. And this was a torch down roof, so we just put another torch down on top of it. And that's what we did for the rehab. Again, it cost us about $20K for the entire rehab to get this unit up and running with both tenants in there. So we rented out both units for about $875 a piece. So it ended up coming out to about $1,750 in total. I'll go into that story about the upstairs tenant, which I knew was eventually going to cause some issues. So after a few years of having this tenant, realized every time each year Section 8 comes out to do an inspection. So if your tenant is a mess, they're going to fail every inspection, whether it's due to cockroaches, grease all over the kitchen cabinet, just anything. For this tenant, it ended up being like BGE was off because they weren't paying their bill, all sorts of different things that we failed each time and had to figure out a way to push forward. Instead of probably the best scenario would have been just to evict him right off the bat. But I did like that cash flow that I didn't really have to mess with. Then throughout having this property, and really, I tried to do the best thing I could for him. I tried to give him resources to go to the library when it was open, to apply for jobs. And when I would go and I'd chat with this tenant, ended up realizing there was a lot more people. I think he was renting out just areas in his house, and that's how he'd make a little bit extra money. And so I'd come over and there'd always be a bunch of extra people in the house, which is a pain in the butt. I also reached out to Section 8 for this tenant to see, hey, what resources do you guys have? This, he has an alcoholic problem. He's got tons of extra people live in the house. And they basically said, unfortunately, sir, we don't have any resources. Our resource is for you to evict him. So that was eventually what I was going to do. I ended up just giving him cash for keys and saying, hey, I can evict you, or I can just give you $1,000 and you can be on your way. And he chose the $1,000, signed a little document for me, and rolled out. When he did that, we ended up choosing to sell the property. But before we chat about selling the property, I had to go and spend another $25,000 to renovate his unit. So at that point, I had two Section 8 tenants, both paying $875. The downstairs lady was wonderful. She was great. And all she did was complain about the upstairs tenant, who was just the mess. So once I got him out of the property, I ended up having to spend the $25,000 on redoing everything in his unit because it was disgusting. Contractors complained about the smell, but there was just all sorts of stuff from kitchen cabinets, appliances, to flooring, to granite countertops, basically the full Monty, all new windows, everything up there. So our final all-in was $90,000. Before I go over the analyzer, if you guys like this kind of content, you like this, you're finding value in this, I'd love you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. And also the analyzer that we're going to go over, you can download this for free to help you in your real estate investing journey. Just look in the video description below. So we said the all-in numbers for the property were $90K. On the analyzer, it shows that comes out to $743 a month of cash flow every month. And even if we only had one of the units rented, it's still, almost breaks even if you have a loan. And even if you only had one unit rented, it still basically breaks even. So great cash flow on the property. The returns on the analyzer, it shows about 15% if you're just spending all cash and you're all in cash. If you end up leveraging the property, this is when it gets crazy. If you leverage and get a loan on the property, it ends up being around a 39% return on investment, which is absolutely bonkers. So going into the analyzer, the few things that stick out is the cash flow without a loan is $1,164.50, which is pretty stinking good for a $90,000 investment. It comes out to about a 15% return. If you end up getting a loan on the property, your returns skyrocket to 39%, which is crazy. Everybody would love 39%, or $743 a month. And that's with a loan. And I do have the interest rate on there at 6.5% because at the time, that's where the interest rates were for back then. You also can see that there's a nice equity spread in the property. So we spent $90,000. I thought it would make somewhere around $150,000. So there's an equity spread of $58,000 that you see on the analyzer. So the property overall was just great all around. So with our final numbers, at renting it out for $1,750 a month, and after expenses, we probably netted about $1,200 a month from property management, from taxes, from insurance. We netted about $1,200 a month over the 4 years that we owned the property. So $12,000 a month times 4 years comes out to $55,000. We also ended up selling the property for $150,000. So we netted about $60K on the gain. So with $55,000 in rent plus a $60,000 in gain on the sale, that comes out to $115,000 minus real estate commissions of about $10,000. We come out somewhere around $100,000, $105,000 in net profit over 4 years. So about $25,000 a year owning this property, which was pretty great. We ended up selling it in November of 2022. And the reason why we sold, or the reasons we sold, is the last piece of the puzzle. So one of the reasons was it wasn't lead free. So not being lead free adds liability. If the tenant all of a sudden sues us, it creates a little bit extra liability, a little higher risk. So that was one of the reasons. Another reason was we never fully rehabbed each unit. So we left the paneling, we left the ceiling panels, and with all that, each time we came back to do a turnover, or if we did have to come back to a turnover, it's just more of a complicated renovation than if it's just drywall and hey, just patch the drywall and paint it back to colors that we want. With paneling and with wall paneling and ceiling panels, it just makes it more complicated. Another reason is I just wanted to redeploy the capital. I thought that property had appreciated enough. I thought it wasn't going to go too much higher for what it was unless it was fully renovated. And so I wanted to take that money, that $150,000, I wanted to put it into another value add project that would do the same thing, that would grow faster. And the last reason, and one thing I didn't chat about earlier, taxes had doubled. So early on, a strategy we did is we do a tax appeal. And we did the tax appeal, and you can see this, I'll show you it on Zillow. We ended up getting an appeal, and we ended up getting the taxes down to $1,600. So we got it down to $1,600, but then immediately the next year's taxes went up, and then it kept going up from $1,600 a couple of years later to $3,200. So basically doubling. So I realized taxes were just going to continue going up for this property. And I said, hey, I'd like to put that money somewhere else. So all in all, this is just a pretty good real estate investment deal and something you can expect when investing in the city. Not a home run by any means, but definitely a double or a triple. We were very happy with the returns. I would have done it again if I could. And that's investing in Baltimore City by the numbers. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you on the next episode.